the facts will show you that these witnesses, many of these witnesses that I had asked that they be excluded, are not in a position to testify at all as to Trooper Jones's behavior at the crime scene during the investigation and arrest of this guy Good. All of that testimony deals with something that is undisputed. We don't dispute it. The coach beat up Chandler Jones. There's no question about it. He pled guilty to simple battery last summer and was fined, and so the facts of all of that are absolutely undisputed. We'll stipulate to that. What's at issue is the behavior of Trooper Jones at Good's house when the sheriff's deputies are conducting their investigation. And I submit to you that a lot of this information about the beating and the party and all of that is just going to be noise. Thank you.
Obviously, you think it warrants a response.
Yes, sir. Well,
a brief response, right?
First of all, I didn't know there was a crime scene as it relates to this gentleman. And I object to that. There certainly was a crime scene. This little boy didn't just get beat up. He got choked, he got punched in the face, he got threatened with, "I'm going to kill you." And he was forced to drink vodka until he puked by a school teacher. I think his dad got to the bonfire where all of this initially started, and he saw his son, and he saw him bleeding, he saw his face puffed, he saw the marks around his neck, and he was told how a coach did this and forced him to drink and threatened to kill him. And I believe all of that is very relevant. I believe that when you hear these children, or these not children anymore, these young men's testimony, is going to be amazing to you. And we're going to, I think you're going to come away from this wondering how Joseph Buzz Jones restrained himself in this circumstance. Off duty, not in a police vehicle, not in a police uniform, not in any way acting as a police officer, but rather acting as a father. He didn't beat the hell out of this man that had just attacked and physically punished his son. It's interesting that Mr. Good isn't here. The real crime was Mr. Good, and he got away with a $300 fine and an $894 after physically brutalizing this man's son. There was a crime, and you need to hear about it, and you need to hear how terrible this crime was, the actions of this people. And then you're going to have to hear about how the sheriff's office responded to it and how he responded to it. Never touched the man. Never touched the man. Amazing restraint. You're going to hear that IA didn't question the independent witness who was on the scene, but took the words of not only the deputies who were eyewitnesses, but the chief deputy up here who wasn't an eyewitness, who characterized everything and accused this man of things he didn't do. That's what this case is going to be about. And when it's all over, you're going to be shaking your heads and saying, "Why are we here?" Thank you.
Ready to proceed?
Yes, I am. I will call Trooper Jones and cross-examine. How are you?
All right.
Good. Trooper Jones, let's go through the formalities here.
I'm sorry, wait. Oh, well, I did just swear them all in.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah, and so remind you that you remain under oath.
Trooper Jones, let's get through some formalities here. State your name and work address for the record.
Trooper Joseph Jones, Louisiana State Police Trooper.
You're employed by a state police, correct?
Yes,
How long have you been with the department?
be 4 years in November.
At the time of this, and you were hired, I think, in November of 14, right? And at the time of this, you'd been on the job about 2.5 years, something like that. The night of April 14, 15 of last year, I call your attention to that night. You got a call about 1 o'clock in the morning, I believe.
Yes,
Okay. And the call came from who?
came from Russ Bunton.
And he is your close friend.
No, not close friend.
Okay, describe your relationship to him.
Worked out with him at the gym, just knowing him through work pretty much.
Okay. How did he find out about this, do you know?
His daughter called him, who was at the party at the time.
And I'm gonna refer to him as Russ, refer to him as Russ, if that's okay. What did he tell you?
He called and told me that Kelly had just called him and told him that Chandler just got his butt kicked by his coach, Coach Gooden. And Chandler's phone wasn't working, and she didn't think he was gonna call, but the coach had come to the house where all the kids were and was threatening the kids and made Callie scared at the same time. And so she called her dad, which was also a deputy, and he knew how to get in touch with me, so he called me.
And he relayed all that information to you in that phone call?
Yes.
Okay. Where were you when you got the call?
I was at my house.
Where had you been earlier in the day?
At my dad's house.
How long?
Probably 6, 7 hours, somewhere around there.
When you got the call, you weren't at your neighbor's house?
No.
Okay. You then, what happened after you got the call?
After I got the call, tried to call my son, couldn't get a hold of my son, called my wife, went over to my neighbor's house, and, because I just left them, it took me a couple minutes prior, and went to tell them what was going on and everything. Still trying to get a hold of my kid, couldn't get a hold of Chandler. And I said, called my wife, let her know what was going on, and it went from there.
What's your neighbor's name?
O'Brien Dupree.
Okay. Did you then, at some point, go try to find Chandler?
We went and tried to find Chandler.
Yeah. Whose vehicle were you in?
My vehicle,
Who was driving?
his wife, my neighbor's wife,
Why?
because I had been drinking earlier that day.
How much did you have to drink?
So 8 to 10 beers in 6, 7 hours. In a 6 to 7 hour time frame. Now this is now 1 o'clock in the morning. I hadn't drank anything in 3 hours.
Yes, sir, I understand. Your wife, at this time, she was a deputy sheriff with?
On duty deputy sheriff, Washington Parish Sheriff.
I got it. How, did she call Russ and ask him to come find you?
I believe one time she asked him to come find me.
Do you know why?
Other than me being agitated, and I mean that's what I suppose what she said was she didn't want me to do anything crazy, or just wanted him to be with me and make sure I didn't do nothing.
Gotcha. So where did y'all go first?
We went to Frenchman's Bend because I thought that Chandler was there. I thought that's where the party was, and that's not where the party was. Russ called me and said, "Where you at?" And I said, "I'm in Frenchman's Bend looking for Chandler." And he said, "Chandler's not in Frenchman's Bend. He's at this other place. The guy that we was looking for moved. I didn't know he'd moved." He said he's over in Thatcher Point. And Russ said, "I'll meet you wherever you're at, and you get in the truck with me." So we stopped at the entrance of the Frenchman's Bend area there, and me and my neighbor got in the truck with Russ, and the wife took my truck home.
All right. We back up a little bit. You thought your son was at Frenchman's Bend, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And Chandler was 16 at the time?
Yes.
Okay. but he was not at Frenchman's Bend.
No,
You didn't really know where he was, right?
no, I hadn't been able to get a hold of him.
I got you. But earlier in the day, did you know where he was going?
No.
Did he tell you where he was going?
No.
All right, Russ hooks up with you, and y'all then head to where?
That was what's called Thatcher Point, which is another little subdivision, and that's where we met Chandler.
And you're in Russ's truck at this time?
Yes,
Okay. And who's driving?
Russ,
Is anybody else in the truck?
O'Brien Duper.
Okay. You learned about your location of your son from Russ, right?
Yes,
Okay. Thatcher's Point, that's a subdivision right over Highway 65, 165, right? And that's where you hooked up with Russ, or you
No,
hooked up with the Frenchman's Bend?
around French's Bend.
I got you. So you finally located your son and you got to his location, correct?
Yes.
And then he tells you what?
He tells me what happened. He tells me that the story of he goes there at the party, and him and Dawson showed up together. Dawson Snell, which is also here. They went to the party together. They ran out of beer. Dawson Snell calls Coach Good. Tells him that they ran out of beer. Coach Good tells him, "Oh, I got you." Comes picks him up. Comes pick both of them up in a golf cart. Brings them back to his house. They start they start sharing beer with each other. I mean, with the kids. He tells him that he tells me that he brings out his AR-10 rifle, passes it around, starts to kids. John tells me that the coach is drunk already whenever he gets him. So he goes in the house, gets his AR-10 rifle, passes it around, and to all the kids that were there, which was 4 kids there altogether. And then he starts talking about how much money he's got in this rifle and blah, 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 and then takes the rifle back in and starts talking about how much money he's got in this bar, and every time that their hands touch the bar that he hit them with a stick. And then they run out of beer. Coach Goo goes in, grabs Tito's vodka, and starts daring him to drink it, and starts calling him a pussy. "If you don't drink this, you big pussy, you big pussy." Kept on calling him the name. And finally Chandler's like, "Give me the vodka." Chose the vodka, immediately starts throwing up. Runs outside, starts throwing up, and he starts hammering on him more. "You big pussy, you can't handle your vodka. You can't," and just keeps on. And Chandler finally turns, what I understand, Chandler says something back to him, and the coach tells him that he's gonna whoop his ass like I've never whooped his ass before, and punches him in the face. And Chandler thought he was playing at first, didn't know what was going on. He punched him and stood back in a fighting stance, and then realized he wasn't playing, and then jumps on him and starts another fight commenced. The 2 witnesses there break him up. Chandler leaves. Chandler tells me he walks off. The coach gets in his golf cart, meets him halfway back to the party, picks him up, and tells him that they're not going to fight anymore. And then, I don't know what the conversation was on the golf cart. Coach stops the golf cart again, tells him again he's going to beat his ass like I've never beat him before, and then they start fighting again. And this is the time that he's choking on top of him. And Chandler says the other 2 witnesses show up in the truck, break up the fight again, and the coach is sitting there screaming he's going to kill him. He's going to, as the fight's being broke up, he's going to kill him. He's trying to get him. I'm going to kill you, Chandler. And then Chandler gets in the truck. They take him back to the party, and the coach goes home, gets on his little motorcycle, and a couple minutes later shows back up at the party, wanting to fight Chandler again. A lot of the kids there are saying, "Coach, get out of here. You're drunk. Get out of here. Go home." And then he starts threatening to fight all the other kids. And that's pretty much where we're left off there.
Gotcha. When you first encountered Chandler, Was it your impression he needed immediate medical attention?
No, not immediate medical attention. Before I could get a hold of him, I was thinking, where they described it, he just got his butt kicked. I was thinking, broke nose, black eye. I was thinking he just got really whooped by an adult. And when I get there, it's more minor marks. He's got a cut on his chin. He's got the choke marks or bruises on his neck, bruises on his back, and he didn't need immediate attention.
Did you ever take him to the doctor?
No.
Okay. Didn't you tell Internal Affairs that he told you he didn't really get in that many good licks on him?
Yeah, the way he put it, he didn't get as many. It didn't hit him as good as I thought it was.
So it really wasn't this vicious beating that supposedly took place, right?
I don't know what the vicious beating. He's covering up, getting whacked in the face, or getting hit. So.
I'm not trying to defend the coach. Okay. The kid when you arrived there, you talked to Chandler and you talked to the other kids, right?
Yeah, the kids were kind of just standing around. Right. They was all just like telling me, all in my ear, as I'm talking to the kids, they're all blah, 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 and they're telling me what happened to the coach showed up. I'm hearing all that going on, and then, the kids, I wasn't really talking to them, but I could hear them what they were saying.
Yeah, I understand. Whose house was it?
Brad Elias was the father, the owner of the house. He had a kid that was Chandler's age, and they were all hanging out over there with a bonfire.
Did you talk to any of the adults?
No.
Were there any adults present?
No.
So it was all kids at the house?
The adults were supposed to be in the house sleeping.
I got you. And I believe you said these kids were drinking, correct?
Yeah, I don't know how many were drinking, but my son was drinking, yes.
Okay. And what'd you say the boy's name was that called for more beer? Dustin?
No, that was Dawson.
Dawson.
Snell.
Okay. All right, after talking to Chandler and the other kids, what did you and Button then do?
Button made contact with the sheriff's office, made sure the sheriff's office was on the way. Said they were sending 3 deputies on the way, which was Cromwell, Ely, and Benson. So we waited around a while, then we drove slowly all the way to Good's house, which is less than a mile away, a couple hundred yards through the field there. And we waited. So he had a long driveway. We went back to his house. We waited right there at the front of the driveway. Saw the deputies coming, and Russ was on the phone with Cromwell. Russ told him, "Yeah, this is us." And he hung up the phone, and we started easing down the driveway. The deputies were pretty much just a couple of seconds behind us, and pulled into the driveway. And I got out of the truck, stood underneath there was a patio type deal. I stood under the patio close to the grass and just stood there waiting. Deputies were walking around, knocking on the windows, knocking on the doors. Couldn't get a hold of him. He finally answers to a window, and then they get a hold of him and tell him that they I guess they recognize themselves as deputies. Told him to come outside, and he comes to the door. And all I said was, "He's over here."
By the time you left your son and the bonfire site and headed over to the coach's house, to Good's house, you knew deputies were on the way, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did y'all arrive at about the same time, or y'all arrived?
They were in the driveway at the same time we was in the driveway. We hadn't even come stop yet either.
I got you. I believe Button told Internal Affairs that they drove very slow, waiting on the deputies to arrive. I think you
Yeah, we wasn't in no hurry to get there. We was waiting on the deputies.
I got you. All right. I believe you told Internal Affairs that you drove down to the garage, and then you and Button got out of the truck. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you just stood there in the carport, correct?
Yes.
All right. I want to, before I forget it, I want to ask you something. What does 10-4 mean?
10-4?
Yeah, when you policemen say 10-4, what does that mean?
It's like, yes, a lot of things. And to ask you a question and you say 10-4, is yes.
I got you. So it means you received the last transmission.
Yeah.
I got you. I believe you told Internal Affairs that when you first got the call that Chandler had been beat up, you were pretty mad, pretty agitated.
Yeah, I mean, when I first got the call, I was agitated. I got more agitated as that I couldn't get a hold of him and figure out what was going on.
Right.
And the more that I couldn't get a hold of him, it went a pretty good time before I was able to get a hold of him and figure out where he was at. I didn't even talk to him. I never talked to him on the phone or anything before I finally made contact with him at the party.
I'm trying to get a handle on how angry you were at that time.
Angry. I mean,
Furious?
I wouldn't say furious at the time, no. I mean, but I was angry.
Would you calm down? No.
Yeah, whenever when I finally talked to my son, I calmed down a whole lot more when I figured out that his nose wasn't broken, he wasn't all bloodied up like I pictured in my head, I guess.
Right. And I believe you told IA that after you met with Chandler and by the time you got over or decided to go over to Good's house, you were still angry, but not as angry as you had been, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So it was would you say it was a pretty clear-headed decision on your part to go over there?
Yeah. I mean, I was pretty clear, level-headed at that time.
Okay. And just a conscious decision to go over there?
I'd say a conscious decision. I mean, my son was 17 years old. I mean, 16 years old. I mean, for one, I thought I was supposed to be there as a parent, and I was there as a parent. Nobody ever told me that I couldn't go over to Good's residence. I had 3 deputies, I mean, a sergeant that was there, an off-duty sergeant, that didn't object to it, and I wanted to know what his story was. I wanted to know I've heard my son's side of the story. I wanted to hear his side of the story. I wanted to look in his eyes and see what was his excuse.
And I believe you said that you hadn't had anything to drink in several hours, so you weren't impaired by alcohol when you decided to go over there.
I say I wasn't impaired. I mean, did I feel the effects of it? Maybe a little. But
Do you? And I taught in the academy for over 20 years, and there's a lot of material covered in the academy. And if you don't remember, you don't remember. But do you remember a class that you would have been taught by the crime lab on crime scene security?
no.
When you, in your personal experience, though, working the road, you know about the security of crime scenes, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And would you say that a crime scene is any scene where a crime has been committed?
Yes.
Okay. And if you, let's say you were working at DWI and you got the driver out of the car, which is pretty usual for you guys, and you're trying to interview the driver, and let's say a passenger gets out of the car to come back, you're not going to allow that, are you?
No. Not
Okay.
unless the passenger had something to do with it. If the passenger got hit by the subject or run off the road by the subject, then yeah, I'd like to know that.
I understand. When you work a fatal crash, for example, if there's a family member present and you're trying to secure the scene and take statements from witnesses and people, you wouldn't allow that family member to get too close to you, would you?
I'd probably embrace the family member for a second.
I understand, but while you're interviewing witnesses, you're not gonna have that guy standing next to you, are you?
No, I would want to hear what witnesses said.
I understand. Let me ask you this.
But that's a whole different story of a crime scene, of a fatal crash and a coach beating up your son.
I understand. Absolutely understand. Let me ask you this. If you were the officer, you were the trooper on patrol, and you were dispatched to investigate a battery committed by an adult on a juvenile, and I'm the father, and I show up at that crime scene, are you gonna let me anywhere near there while you're interviewing the individual who allegedly committed the battery?
I don't know what their policy procedures were.
I'm asking you what you would do.
If some father wanted to be there, I mean, if he wasn't getting in the way, I mean,
Would
his
you
son's
let him,
16 years old.
would you let him walk in between you and the guy that you just read the rights to?
No, I wouldn't.
Is it fair to say, Trooper Jones, that the only reason you were allowed to be present in that crime scene was that you were a trooper and they knew you were a trooper?
No,
Why else would they have allowed you in there?
because I was John's father, and I was their other father.
Did you not tell, let me ask you, did you hear the deputies read Good his rights?
Yes.
So you were close enough to hear that. I believe you told internal
I mean,
affairs.
yeah, I could hear the rights being said.
I got you. And I think you told internal affairs you were about 15 feet away or something close to that.
Yes.
Close enough that you could hear the rights read, correct?
Yes,
You've read many people their rights.
yes,
Part of that is you have the right to remain silent, is that correct?
yes.
All right. Did Good, this guy Good, he knew you were a policeman.
Yes.
Did you not say to him, do you know who I am?
No, I did not say. I said, you know who I am. I said, you know who I am and what I do for a living.
So you wanted him to know that you were a policeman?
He already knew I was a policeman.
I got you.
As in saying, you know who I am. I didn't ask him if he knows who I am. I mean, he knew who I was before.
Why would you ask him that if you didn't want to be sure he knew you were a policeman?
Well, because my son was at his house, and if I found out why, I mean, that my son was drinking, I mean, and he just beat the piss out of my son, I mean, he wouldn't think that I would be wanting to press charges about that or upset about that.
I believe you told Internal Affairs that you said to Good, I will drop all charges now if you want to go out in the field and handle this like a man, or put your hands on a real man, or words to that effect. Isn't that true?
Yes.
I believe you told Internal Affairs, I believe you said to IA, they were sitting there talking to him. They got through doing their spiel, and I walked right in between them, was probably a foot away from Good, and asked him the questions that I asked him. That's a quote out of your statement.
That's exactly how I stated. He walked, the deputies got through doing their talk. He turned around, the deputy turned and looked at me, put his hands up like this, and like, what do I want to do? And I walked right in between them, this guy, he never tried to stop me. Walked right in between them and started talking to Coach Goo just as normal as we're talking right here.
So what about what?
I didn't cut anybody off.
I understand.
Okay.
I
I mean,
understand.
I didn't cut the deputy off from doing anything.
I'm not suggesting that you did, but what I'm suggesting is that you walked between the deputies.
I did walk between the deputies, but he turned around and looked at, like I said, I didn't cut him off and do nothing. He was already through talking to him. He
Yeah.
turned around, looked at me, and put his hands up like this, and that's when I walked up to the Coach Goo.
Deputy Cromwell will be able to testify as to his impressions. When you say you heard them finish their spiel, what did you think, what did that mean to you, finish their spiel?
Well, that they were through talking to him, I guess.
Okay. And you're not gonna dispute that you were within a foot?
I can't say exactly how close it was.
Well, that's what you told Internal Affairs, that
I
you were about a foot.
may have said about a foot, but I mean, I don't know exactly how close it was. I wasn't sitting there judging with Ruben how far we were apart from each other.
Did you raise your voice?
Yeah, I raised my voice my final, when I asked him the final time that he put his hand on my head.
And did you use any profanity?
The last time I did.
What did you say?
The last time, I asked him 3 times, did you put your hand on my kid? He wouldn't answer me, wouldn't look at me. I asked him that 3 times, and the last time I said, did you put your hands on my fucking kid? And at that time, the deputy put him in handcuffs and walked off, and I walked off.
Now, let me ask you. One policeman has just told this guy he has a right to remain silent. Another individual, father of this child that was beaten, walks up. He knows you're a policeman. And he said, and you say to him, did you put your fucking hands on my kid? Now, he's just been told on one hand you have the right to remain silent. Now you got another policeman saying, did you put your hands on my fucking kid? Would that explain maybe why Good didn't say anything to you?
No, I wasn't there as a police officer. I wasn't wearing any police attire.
But he knew you were a policeman.
He did know I was a police.
All right.
What am I supposed to do about this? I can't ask the question because I'm a police officer?
Let me ask the questions, okay? All right. Deal by my question. You're a policeman. You understand what it means to tell someone their constitutional rights. You have the right to remain silent. Now another policeman is shouting at you, talk to me, tell me, did you commit this battery? Did you put your hands on my son?
Excuse me, I don't think anybody said anything about battery. Those words were not spoken. He said the same thing 3 times.
I apologize.
Did you put your hands on my son?
I got you.
Period.
I understand that. If he had put,
Please, would y'all direct your
I'm
comments
sorry.
Yeah.
I
to us?
directed that to you. Objection.
It's already been, he's already accepted it, but next time, please, direct your comments to us. Would you please rephrase the question?
I will, Your Honor. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
He made the same mistake last time.
I spent too much time in court, I'm sorry. I just wanna be clear, because honestly, when I read it and prepared this, why did you ask Good or state to him, you know who I am? Why would you want him to know that you were a state trooper?
He already knew I was.
I understand that, but why would you want to reinforce that?
Well, I just told him, you know who I am and what I do for a living. I mean, you invited my son over to your house to drink alcohol, and then you beat his ass, knowing that I am a trooper.
And
I don't,
we understand that there's certain comments that were made that night that have to be repeated, but beyond the necessary repetition of profanity, we would appreciate a more direct response without profanity.
yes.
And I apologize for the use of it, Mr. Chairman.
That wasn't what I was referring to.
I understand. What did you mean when you said to him, I will drop all charges if you go out in the field with me and let's settle this like men, or put your hands on a real man, or words to that effect? What did you mean when you said that?
I really don't know. I was agitated at the time, and don't know what I would have done if he would have said, okay. I wouldn't have done anything. I mean, the deputies wouldn't allow me to do anything anyway.
Well, a few minutes ago, you told me it was a pretty clear-headed decision to go over there. Now you're telling me that you were pretty agitated. Was that the explanation? Did you get more agitated as you got in his presence?
Oh, yes. I mean, like sitting right there and talking and asking, and he's not looking at me. He's just looking at the ground and not responding to anything. I mean, it was agitated, but I still had a clear head. I still wasn't losing my cool.
I don't think you did lose your cool. I think you knew exactly what you were doing, Trooper Jones. Do you know?
Is that a question? Objection.
Sustained.
The comments.
I apologize for the testimony. Do you know of your own knowledge whether or not the deputies who were at that scene received any disciplinary action for their handling of it?
Yes.
Do you know that Deputy Cromwell did not get any discipline? He just got a verbal?
Well, I heard he got a counsel, a letter of counseling is what I was told.
Exactly. Everybody else was demoted, correct?
Captain on the ship was demoted, who was not there at the scene.
That's correct.
And Sergeant Button got demoted, who was on the scene, that was an off-duty at the time. But I don't know why, I was never informed of the reasons why.
I understand. But you do know that they were demoted?
Yes.
They can testify as to that. Jones, I'm gonna ask you a question. Did you ever send any text messages to Deputy Cromwell?
Yes.
Did you send a text message to him with a screenshot of what you, I think, referred to as a supplemental report?
Yes.
That supplemental report that you sent to him, was it ever filed with the troop?
I don't know. What's up about the fight with the troop?
Yeah, with your chain of command.
I guess so.
You wouldn't know whether you filed it or not? Did you give it to your supervisor?
I imagine they got a copy of it. I mean, I got a copy of the letter from in the mail, and that was it.
Of your supplemental report that you wrote?
My supplemental?
Yes.
Oh, yes. I filed it too.
You filed it with
I
the troop,
sent,
with your chain of command?
I emailed my supplemental to Tommy Lewis.
Why did you send it to Cromwell?
Just to let him know what's going on.
Let's get our story straight, maybe.
I mean, possibly, just tell you, yes.
All right.
This is what happened, and
Let me ask you one more question. After you had been interviewed by Internal Affairs, and I'm speculating here that it was after the appeal had been filed, did you not send him another text message with a screenshot of his testimony to State Police Internal Affairs and ask him, is that what you told Internal Affairs?
yes,
And did you not, and he answered you and said, pretty much, is that correct?
yes, something like
And when you texted him back, you said, that's not how I remember it, 10-4, question mark.
that. Yes, I guess, if that's what you saw.
Is that what you remember?
I don't remember what I wrote after that. I don't remember writing 10-4.
If you did write it, what would it have meant with a question mark?
I don't even remember. I'm trying to remember what it was.
At the time that you were interviewed by Internal Affairs, were you told not to discuss this with anybody?
Yes,
Why did you discuss it with Cromwell?
I didn't discuss it.
You sent him an email, a text message, and that.
I asked him if this is what he wrote.
It's not
Everything was already done.
My question is, you were given an order not to do that. Why did you do it?
After it was done,
I'm gonna object there. So if I read the letter, I don't know of any reference in the letter charging him with violating that order. It's outside the scope of the four corners of the letter of dismissal of the discipline in this matter.
Sustained. You have to stick within the four corners of the letter of discipline.
I believe that's all the questions I have for you.
I'll reserve the right to call him.
I've got a question for Judge Jones. The party that your son was at before the coach was called, what party was that?
that was, I guess, a kid's bonfire that they put together in the middle of a field.
Was it supervised by any adults?
Not that I know of.
So were the kids drinking at this party?
I'm sure some of them, I didn't see any of them drinking.
But as I understand, the call was made to the coach, said we ran out of beer.
Yes, my son and Dawson Snell, or I guess they had beer, somebody had bought them beer.
Did you know that there was any beer drinking?
No, I didn't know where the channel was.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir. Commissioner Parker.
Trooper Jones, what's the relationship between the coach and your son? Is he his
Football.
football?
coach.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
And
Sterling-
teacher, and teacher
Okay,
at Sterling.
okay. So they know each other?
Yes,
Okay. Had he ever been over to his house before?
not him.
Okay.
Not that I know of. I don't know if he's been to his house. I don't know.
call Deputy Cromwell.
Deputy Cromwell, you were sworn in earlier.
Yes, ma'am.
I remind you that you remain under oath.
Yes, ma'am.
How you doing?
Great.
Okay. State your name and address for the record.
Justin Cromwell. You said my address?
Business address.
400 St. John Street, Monroe, Louisiana.
How are you employed?
I work for the Washita Parish Sheriff's Office
How long?
for 12 years.
May I call you Justin?
Please.
Justin, generally tell the commission what your duty assignments are. Or,
I'm currently assigned to the Investigation Division where I investigate crimes within the criminal division there, enforce the laws of Louisiana and ordinances of Washita Parish.
you were employed by the Washita Parish Sheriff's Office on the night of April 14, 15 last year, 2017.
I was.
You were not in investigations at that time, though, correct?
No, sir.
You were road patrol?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You recall the incident that you investigated that night?
Yes, sir.
Would you briefly tell the commission how you came to be dispatched to that?
I received a phone call from a coworker stating that our captain had told he and I to go to a location that we had a deputy's child possibly battered by a suspect.
And the suspect was who?
A Mr. Good, I believe.
Do you recall what time you were dispatched?
Approximately 2,300 hours that evening.
Okay.
That night.
And while en route, did you see any further information as to what was going on?
If I remember correctly, I received a few different phone calls from different parties, kind of giving me additional information on the way there.
Did you have information as to who the victim was of this alleged battery?
Yes, sir.
Who was that?
I was told it was Haley Jones' son, which is, his name was Chandler.
And Haley Jones was your coworker, correct?
Yes, sir.
She was at that time an OPSO deputy, and she was on duty.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you recall the address of where that took place?
No, sir. I believe it was on a Lone Line.
That's in Sterlington.
Yes, sir.
If I told you it was 336 Lenoa, how do you pronounce
Lone
that?
Line, I think that's correct.
Okay. When you arrived on the scene, was there anybody there?
Yes, sir.
Who was there?
I saw an off-duty OPSO or Washita Parish Sheriff's Office deputy with the rank, but he was the rank of sergeant, but he was off-duty. And also saw an off-duty trooper, Joseph Jones.
Deputy, would you mind just speak up a little bit louder, please?
Yes, sir.
What were they doing?
Trooper Jones was standing under a carport or an opening of a garage, something similar to that. And the off-duty deputy was walking around the front of the residence.
He was just walking around? Was he knocking on windows or anything? You
It
know?
appeared that he was knocking on the windows or doors, trying to make contact with the suspect.
I got you. Did you give him any instructions? That would be Russ Button, wouldn't it?
Russ Button is his name, yes.
Correct. Did you give him any instructions?
I told him that I was there now and that I could handle it from there and that we needed to back up.
How did you make contact? What did you do then?
I was standing in front of the house where Russ Button was attempting to make contact with the suspect. When I was telling him that I had it from that point on, I could see through the window that he had knocked on the suspect through the window, so I motioned for the suspect to come out and talk to me.
When you asked Trooper Jones and Button to step back, they complied, didn't they?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, so this guy Good and his wife came out?
Yes, sir.
What happened next?
I began speaking with Good in reference to the alleged battery.
Did you read him his rights?
Yes, sir.
Was anyone nearby when you read him his rights?
Yes, sir. Good and his wife and other deputies that had later arrived, I believe Corporal Benson and also Jason Healy, Russ Bunton, and Trooper Jones were all present.
Sorry. Ely, you were FTOing him at the time, correct?
Yes, sir. I was his field trainer.
How long had he been on the job?
I'm not exactly sure.
Okay, how long had you been working with?
Not exactly sure, but if he went to nights, then he'd have to been there a few months or a couple months at least before he would have came to nights to work with me.
Did Trooper Jones ever speak to the coach? Good?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. You remember what he said?
I can remember a certain instance of things he said to Good.
You can elite the profanity. What did he say?
He said he continued to ask Good if he put his hands on his son.
Did he raise his voice?
Yes, sir.
How close did he get to Mr. Good?
Pretty close, I would say, within a foot or so.
Is it fair to say he stepped between you and Mr. Good?
While I was speaking with him.
Objection is leading as a witness.
Suspend.
Where was he when he spoke to the coach?
When Trooper Jones spoke with the coach, he had walked up from behind me and walked in front of Good.
Where were you?
I was at first in front of Good speaking with him.
Did he use any profanity?
The trooper?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Did he threaten Mr. Good?
He made comments that he would not pursue criminal charges if we would step into the yard and handle this like men.
And I believe you told Internal Affairs, to be afraid of. How did Jones's presence at the crime scene, did it disturb you?
It impeded my investigation. I feel that if it would have been a normal situation, I would have been able to contact my victim first instead of having to go to the suspect's house. So I didn't have the full story from the victims and other witnesses when investigating it. I had to contact my suspect first, which was very awkward. And then while trying to question the suspect, it was very difficult due to being interfered with during questioning.
Did you got Jones, Good out of there quickly?
Yes, sir. Due to the feeling like the situation was escalating and could become physical or violent, I went ahead and put the suspect Good into handcuffs, took him into custody, and put him in the back of a unit, basically for his safety.
After this incident, did you receive a text message from Trooper Jones?
I did.
More than one?
It was a short conversation, I would say.
First text message you got, tell me about it.
Trooper Jones sent me a text asking first it was a screenshot of a statement that I made to IA investigators and state police. And then the following text was, did I say this to the IA investigator? I responded with, yes. I believe if I had to quote myself, yes, pretty much, or something along that line. And he responded with not exactly how I remembered it, 10-4. Now I remember that he wrote the 10-4 with X4, and I didn't get the, you know, the reference, so I asked him what that meant. He said the number 10 dash 4.
Was there a question mark behind the 10-4?
Believe so.
What did that mean?
I took it as he possibly was trying to accuse me of lying or misleading the truth, you know, which is the same thing.
And there was only exchange of text messages that you two had.
Yes, sir. After that, I haven't spoken with him since.
Did you get a text message prior to that one?
Prior to the conversation in reference to the IA statement,
Yes.
before speaking with IA investigators, I received a text from either Haley Jones or Trooper Jones, which was a screenshot of a supplemental report that Trooper Jones said he had written.
And what did you take that to mean?
I felt like we were trying to get our story straight.
I have no further questions.
Deputy Cromwell, my name is Floyd Falcon, and I represent Trooper Jones in this matter. How long did it take you from the time you got the message that you should, I think it was Benson that contacted you to go to the scene?
Yes, sir.
How long before did it take you to get out there?
Well, due to the nature of the call, obviously I was driving pretty quick, but just as long as, I mean, I drove straight there, so however long that would take. 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes.
Okay. And who did you talk to in that 10 or 15 minutes?
I received a phone call from Benson and telling me more that, just giving me more information. I also received a phone call from Russ Bunton.
Did Bunton tell you?
He was just helping instruct me to the location of the residence there.
Anybody else?
Not that I can specifically recall.
Now, were you alone, or did you have another officer with you?
I was training Jason Ely. He was in my vehicle with me.
When you got to the scene, was Trooper Jones, I think you said he was under the carport.
Yes, sir.
What was his demeanor?
He seemed more calm than I would have expected him to be.
What was Coach Good's condition?
He seems pretty inebriated or intoxicated.
Was he having trouble standing up?
Yes, sir.
Was he slurring his words?
Yes, sir.
Was any question in your mind that he was highly intoxicated?
No, sir.
Okay. Now, you had been advised by someone on the way there that Trooper Jones had had something to drink that day, right?
Yes, sir. I believe it was from Russ Bunton.
Okay. And
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the answer.
I think it was Russ Button that
Okay,
told
I got
you. Tell me what you observed. So you had some interaction over a period of 10 or 15 minutes with Trooper Jones. What did you observe him to be? What was his condition other than calm, insofar as alcohol might be concerned? Did you perceive that he was intoxicated?
I believe I could tell that he had had some alcoholic beverages, but I did not perceive him to be highly intoxicated.
I believe you told Internal Affairs that if you wouldn't have known that he had some alcoholic beverages, you probably wouldn't have even thought about he was drinking.
True statement. Probably true.
So he certainly, there was nothing about his demeanor, his acting that led you to believe that he was intoxicated.
No, sir.
What about the what parts of the information that you received along the way, or the initial information you got from Benton, led you to believe that you needed to hurry up and get there?
I believe Benson had told me that, that Fuzz and Bunton had arrived at the suspect's house, and we needed to hurry up before they got to him first, or something along that line.
And y'all got there about at the same time,
As who?
as Jones and Bunton?
No, sir.
How long?
I don't know how long they would have been there before I got there, but they were there prior to my arrival. Already out of the vehicle, like I said before, when I exited my vehicle, arrived at the house, Bunton was already in front of the residence, knocking on windows and doors, and Trooper Jones was underneath the carport.
Was Trooper Jones knocking on windows or doors?
Not that I saw when I arrived.
Did you tell, who is the chief deputy at Wichita Parish?
The chief deputy is Chief Deputy Mark Michaud.
Did you tell Mark Michaud that Jones was highly intoxicated?
No, sir.
Did you tell Mark Michaud that Jones was beating on doors and windows?
No, sir. Mark Michaud, our chief deputy, never spoke with me in reference to this.
Or did you tell anybody to relay such messages to Marchand? Excuse me, yeah, to Marchand.
No one within my department spoke with me about this incident, other than the reports they asked me to write. I spoke with State Police's IA investigator, and that was the only time I was questioned about the incident.
Now, you had some information that Gould had beat up Chandler Jones, right?
Yes, sir.
Did you see Chandler Jones that night?
Yes, sir.
Did he have apparent bruises and contusions?
Yes, sir.
Would you describe where?
I saw red marks and early bruising on his face, neck, and chest areas.
When you questioned Gould, did Gould acknowledge that he had had an altercation with Chandler Jones?
Yes, sir.
He told you he did?
I remember Good saying that they had tussled, but he tried to place the blame on Chandler.
Did Gould have any bruises or contusions on him?
Not that I can recall, but not 100% on that.
Did you observe empty beer cans in the area?
Yes, sir.
Did you observe vomit on the cement?
Yes, sir.
Did you determine whose vomit it was?
No, sir. But due to the testimony of witnesses and the victim, I believed it to be Chandler Jones.
Right. When we talk about the victim, we're talking about Chandler Jones. We're not talking about Gould. We're not characterizing Gould as a victim in this matter, are we?
Good as a victim?
Yeah,
No, sir.
I wanted to be clear about that.
I arrested Good.
Yes, sir, I appreciate that. And one of the reasons you arrested him, because you found out he was giving alcohol to minors, 16 years old, right?
I charged him with contributing to the delinquency of a juvenile for that fact, yes, sir.
And that was the basis of that charge.
For that charge, yes.
Yes, sir. Did you learn that there was more than one altercation precipitated by Mr. Gould? One at Gould's house, where he invited those kids over there to drink, right?
Yes, sir.
And then there was another altercation down the street where he pulled a child off of the golf cart, got him down in the ditch, got over him and punched him in the face.
Yes, sir. I arrested him for that as well.
Did you also arrest him for threatening to kill the child?
Yes, sir.
How long you been a deputy?
12 years.
In that 12 years, you ever had an occasion to arrest a school teacher for physically beating a child after providing them with liquor?
No, sir.
Kind of unusual circumstances.
Yes, sir.
Acceptable circumstances for a teacher, in your opinion?
Not for anyone.
think you said that when you originally got there and when Good came out, tell me, did Good yell anything through the window before he came out?
Not that I can recall. I remember when I saw Good through the window, I just motioned for him to come outside and talk to me, and I remember stepping in front of the window and shining a light on my uniform to let him know that I was a cop on
Right,
duty.
and that was gonna be my next question. You were in full uniform.
Yes, sir.
You were in a marked police vehicle,
Yes, sir.
where you have your lights flashing.
Yes, sir.
You saw fit, Chandler Jones's situation was such that you saw fit to take photographs of his condition, did you not?
Yes, sir.
I don't mean to try and put words in your mouth, but I read your report. It's kind of a detailed supplemental report, and I appreciate that. But you said that you observed red marks, abrasions, cuts on his face, neck, chest, and back. Is that what you wrote?
Yes, sir.
And that's what you saw?
Yes, sir.
In your report, you said you gave victim notification to Chandler and to his dad. What is victim notification?
It's a form that the sheriff's office has, and I'm sure maybe other agencies, but when you're a victim of a certain crime, that's identified by that form. If you make an arrest, or even if you don't, you fill this form out so that when they are arrested, or if they're arrested in that instance, then before they're released from custody or from a jail, that they will be notified upon their release, I guess, to give them a heads up, so they can make arrangements to feel more safe.
During the course of your investigation, did you determine how it was that, I think the kid's name is Jacob, excuse me one second. Jacob Bourne, Darson Snell, and Chandler Jones got to the coach's house?
Without having to read from my report, if I remember correctly, if it says stuff different in my report, then, but if I remember correctly, it was Chandler had contacted the coach Good, and he told him that he was out of his personal alcohol, wanted to know if he had more alcohol. So he said, sure, come on over. So he started walking through a pasture or field that's separating where he was to where Good lives. And as he stated, he got halfway through that pasture or field, Coach Good met them halfway through the field and picked them up on a golf cart and carried them there the rest of the way.
You sure it wasn't Dawson Snell that called the coach? As
Yeah.
opposed to Chandler?
Could be. If you don't mind checking your report, I think that might be a significant factor. It says Dawson stated he ran out of alcohol to drink, so decided to call Jack. So Dawson.
Jack is, I noticed, I couldn't help but notice, I'm not from here, but I couldn't help but notice you referred to Good as Jack in your report. Did you know Good?
No, every time I write a report, and you're clear to check any report I write, when I identify them the first time, I use their first and last name, and then always throughout the report after that, I use their first name, simply because multiple people and families have the same last name.
Sure.
So I don't want to keep referring to, I'll use myself as an example, Cromwell, you
Right.
can't keep track of who is Cromwell.
So it just struck me, I understand what you're saying, but that's just a technique.
I've never met the man in my life,
Okay.
other than the day I arrested him. Did you know Trooper Jones at the time? I did.
Okay. Did Trooper Jones, in your presence, did he ever identify himself as being there because he was a Louisiana State policeman?
No, sir.
You knew he was a Louisiana State policeman.
I knew him well.
And when you asked he and Russ Bunton to step aside when you were commencing your investigation, they did.
They did.
Now, when you completed your questioning of Good, did you make any type of motion or hand signals to Trooper Jones that you recall?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Tell me about your conclusion of your interview with Mr. Good.
Once it was over, we placed him in handcuffs into the back of a unit. We spoke with Russ Bunton and Trooper Jones, who was able to tell us where the victims were located and take us to their location. Victim and witnesses.
And in that regard, he was assisting you, he assisted in giving you information that was important to your investigation.
Yes, sir.
Now, I got the impression from your direct testimony that you sort of reversed your usual practice. You would first go to a victim and get their story, but in this case, you went to Good's house.
Yes, sir.
And why was that?
Because Trooper Jones and Sergeant Bunton were already on scene, and I felt that it was necessary to get there first, instead of the victim, to ensure that he didn't contact the suspect in a way that could get him or Sergeant Bunton in trouble.
Sure. And he had not.
He had not.
Now, have there been investigations where you did them just in this fashion, that you would go first to the victim's area, or excuse me, to the perpetrator's area, as opposed to talking to the victim? Do it both ways?
Well, there would be no time that I would intentionally talk to the suspect before the victim, but there are times that where, let's say I was dispatched to a domestic, and maybe upon pulling up in the area of the residence that I was dispatched to, I see the suspect leaving the scene, and I would get out and take him into custody, and then transport him back to the house, and then speak to the victim first.
You learned from the minors involved about them running out of alcohol, and did you ask them, sir, why would, when I first heard this story,
Probably the same response.
it kind of blew me away that some 16-year-old kids would feel free to contact their coach to get them alcohol. That didn't work that way in Donaldsonville where I grew up.
It didn't work that way where I grew up either.
Yeah, I mean, that struck me as very awkward.
They said that it wasn't the first time that they've done that before.
Did they also tell you that Coach Good required them during school time to go over to his house and do errands for him?
No, sir.
You didn't get that far with it, huh? Maybe we will later today. Did you also speak with Mrs. Good?
Yes, sir. I mean, she was there, and I believe we spoke, but I don't remember directly questioning her about any parts of the crime. Maybe just ask her what. I asked her what she saw and things like that. Yeah.
What did she tell you? Did she portray her husband as the perpetrator?
I don't believe so, but I'd have to check my report.
Did you determine, I'm sorry.
Her name is Emily Good, and she stated she did not observe any physical contact, nor did she observe any underage drinking. So, no, she did not.
She must have not been there.
Mr. Fowler, is that a question, sir?
Or she lied.
One or the other, she wasn't there or she lied.
But I put my money on which one.
Yes, sir. I appreciate that. Now, had you completed your questioning of Mr. Good when you said, I think you said that Jones walked up behind you?
No, sir.
You had not completed?
No, sir.
Okay. What had you had left to do?
I'm not sure. I remember still actively speaking with him when Trooper Jones began saying that.
Where was Ely and Benson at that time when you were questioning Good?
I believe they were just standing around within, earshot or within arm's reach.
Of you?
Of me and the suspect.
No, I wasn't quite sure what the suspect might do at that point.
Well, he was leading up to stand as well, so they were helping do that, and also Ely was part of the investigation. Since I was training him, he was gonna be the one actually conducting the investigation here, under my supervision, so.
But he really wasn't doing the questioning, you
Yeah,
were.
he really wasn't doing anything.
But in any event, when you initially told Jones and Bunton to back up, or back off, they did.
They did.
Did, counsel for the state police had asked if it came between you, if Jones came between you and Lou, did he do that?
Yes, sir, in a way, I was speaking with him face to face, and then when Jones began asking him those questions, he was then speaking with you face to face, so.
But the three of y'all were the same area, I mean, you didn't back off.
Well, actually, he was standing more back toward the driveway when we started, and then he moved his way up into the interrogation.
But what I'm saying, you didn't even see anything.
No, I stayed there, yeah, we were trying to get him to back up.
Did Buzz Jones touch Jack Good?
When you say Buzz, you're talking about Joseph Jones?
Yeah.
Trooper Jones? I never saw him, any physical contact, I don't believe.
Now, when Trooper Jones inquired of Mr. Good, or Coach Good, if he wanted to handle this like a man, what did Good say?
I can't remember his exact response. I'm sure no.
He did respond.
I can find it in my report if I put it in there.
I think he did. He said no.
He said, no.
He didn't want any of that.
No, I don't believe so.
And I think, I got a little bit of advantage because I'm reading straight down your report, but anyway, it says, at that point, you said you asked Jones to step away again and he complied. Certainly, Jones was never a threat to you. I mean, you didn't feel any hostility towards yourself from Trooper Jones.
No, sir.
Did you get the impression he was acting just like a lot of other dads might have acted in the same circumstance?
Yes, sir.
and again, I get to read your report, but, did you observe any nonverbal signs of aggression by Trooper Jones towards Coach Gould?
I wouldn't think he, other than him just standing in front of him saying, let's step in the yard. No, like flinching or.
He didn't ball up his fist, he didn't attempt to grab him around the neck.
No, sir.
All right. Give me 1 second, I think I have one more question. Did you learn that that wasn't the incident at the house, Gould's house, between the young Chandler Jones? There was a second incident down the road, I'm getting them out the golf course, and we talked about that a little bit later. Would you tell the board, wasn't there a third incident where Gould came to the area where they were having the bonfire at the other kid's house, where there was a bunch of other kids, and he got over there, he was cursing, threatening a group of kids?
I'll speak from Chase. Chase stated that he told, or that Jack showed back up to the residence on a dirt bike. Chase stated when he arrived, he immediately began yelling and confronting everyone there in an aggressive manner. Chase stated he believed his only intention was to fight them all due to him yelling, "I'm gonna beat y'all's ASS." Chase stated he was finally able to get Jack into the vehicle with Emily, who later arrived in a Jeep, I believe, and they left.
Chandler was also the one that told you, Chandler and Jacob was the one that told you about the coach hollering at Chandler, "I'm gonna kill you, I'm gonna kill you." He also talked about, did he also make similar threats to the group when he got to the house where they were having the bonfire?
Yes.
And that included some young girls, and Russ Bunton's daughter being one of them, and a number of young people.
Yes.
Did anybody tell you anything to contradict or to give you any indication that the coach's actions or activities were acceptable or reasonable under the circumstances?
I wouldn't have arrested them. They were acceptable.
Once you arrested the coach and put him in the car, where did Jones go? What was he doing at that point?
Are you referring to when we placed him into custody at Gould's house?
Yes.
He was still around, we were talking with him, he was telling us the locations of the other witness and victims, and he took us there, and then again, he took us to other witnesses that we couldn't find at the party where the kids were, where the victim was located. So he took us to, I think, 2 other addresses or residences where I found the other witnesses.
Was he out of control or was he being helpful?
Who've been helpful.
All the questions I have. Thank you, sir.
I promise, 3 short questions.
He had only one, so.
Lawyers don't get on the oath here.
Sort of like I can name that tune if you want to know. Justin, is it standard practice for you to take photographs of a battery victim?
Yes, sir.
Is that normal?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And it wasn't the ferociousness of this attack that caused you to take the picture?
Well, the attack wasn't very minor, but if I observed physical evidence off of any battery, I would have documented those evidence.
And I just can't let it pass. Didn't you say to Colonel Affairs, can you remember how you described Jones as yelling at Goode? Remember what you said?
I don't remember what I said, but I remember the truth, which is him standing in front of Goode. The first time, he would say it in a normal tone, and then he said it several different times, each time raising his voice to be louder and more aggressive each time.
Did you say he got up to a pretty good holler?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I don't have no questions.
I'll let that leading question.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Lee.
Deputy, at any time did you tell the trooper to leave?
I don't believe I did.
Okay. After things kind of calmed down, I think you just said he was being helpful in the investigation.
After things calmed down, he assisted us by showing us the other witnesses' addresses. He was familiar with the area and the kids due to them being friends with his son, so he knew where these witnesses lived, and he assisted by bringing us to those locations to help speak with those people.
Do you perceive he interfered with your investigation?
I believe that his presence at Goode's house interfered with my investigation while speaking with Goode. Other than that, I believe he assisted my investigation.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, sir.
I got a couple of questions for you. Now, at one point, you testified that you thought Trooper Jones impeded your investigation because it caused you to have to go to the suspect's location first. You recall saying that?
Yes, sir.
When Trooper Jones stepped between you and Goode, however you want to describe that situation, you were still questioning Goode at that point?
Yes, sir.
Had you made any indication or any sign that you were finished questioning Goode?
No, sir.
Was it apparent that you were still questioning Goode?
I would believe so, especially from another law enforcement officer.
Did you consider that also impeding your investigation?
Yes, sir.
Now, you made a comment that during that time when you made a statement that said, we were trying to get him to back up. Do you remember saying that earlier on?
Yes, sir.
Who's the him that you're talking about?
Trooper Jones.
And what had you done to try to get him to back up?
Verbally and physically kind of grab him, come on man, back up, back up.
Okay. And did he immediately back up?
No, sir.
Any follow-up?
No, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Doc.
May this witness be released, or do you need to hold him for like? Yeah.
I have a cell number and I'd like to
Oh,
have
if
him
you
on
have a
call.
cell number.
So you're free to go, but I'll call you.
Thank you.
Next witness.
Call Colonel Kevin Reeves.
Right.
Yes, sir.
He's gonna read you on
Yes.
At this time, I'm gonna release Ely, I'll release Ely. I think in view of the story you got here, we don't need the young rookie to tell us anything else. He would be duplicitous, so I would be willing to release him so we can shorten it now.
You wanna go bring him in and tell him, or,
I can tell him.
okay.
Afternoon, Carl. How are you? Colonel, state your name and address for the record, please.
Colonel Kevin
Business
Reeves.
address.
Colonel Kevin Reeves, with the Louisiana State Police Headquarters on Independence Boulevard in Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
And your rank,
Superintendent,
and how long you had that job?
about a year and a half now.
Say again?
About a year and a half now.
Tell the commission what your duty assignments were before you were superintendent.
Just before I was superintendent, I was a region major, command inspector of Region 3 Patrol in North Louisiana. Prior to that, I was a troop commander at Troop F here in Monroe. And prior to that, I was executive officer and shift sergeant for patrolling my county.
So you've had all the ranks there are to have.
Except deputy superintendent.
Colonel, I'm gonna show you, may I approach you with this? I'm gonna show you the letter and ask you to identify. Is that the letter that you sent to Troop Jones?
Yes, sir, it is.
If you could, briefly describe to the commission the process of handling a disciplinary matter, just briefly.
You mean once it's been completed by internal affairs, or do you
The whole
start from the very
process.
beginning?
When you get a complaint on a trooper, how is it processed?
When we receive a complaint on a trooper, depending on how it was received, in this case, it was received by the troop commander, retired troop commander Tommy Lewis. It's my understanding through the sheriff's office from Washita Parish. I think the chief deputy, in fact, called. He contacted internal affairs, made them aware of what he was told concerning the incident, and then internal affairs made a determination that they would work, that they should probably work this incident. So from that, they contact the chief of staff and brief him on what they have for authorization to work an investigation. He authorized an investigation, briefs me on it for his delegated authority for that.
All right, so once the investigation by internal affairs is completed, you have a process by which you discuss what discipline ought to be imposed, if any, correct?
We do.
Would you describe that for the commission?
Yes, sir. Once an investigation is completed, a copy of the case report is forwarded to the section or troop commander where the employee works. The section or troop commander reviews the report, makes a determination on what he or she believes to be the appropriate discipline. Once that is done, the report along with their discipline is forwarded up the chain of command to the region or section major, the command inspector of that area. He reads the report, makes a determination on whether he concurs with the recommendation from the troop commander or the section commander, or he can change the recommendation. And then from there, it goes to the deputy superintendent of that section, same process. And then it goes to, if I'm not mistaken, it goes to back to internal affairs, who forwards it to legal for viewing. Then it returns to internal affairs, where it is disseminated to our disciplinary review committee that we formed last year to review, discuss, and try to determine the appropriate amount of discipline for the action that was committed.
Is it accurate to say that's pretty much the first time that you have seen the internal affairs report and become totally familiar with what's being investigated?
Absolutely.
Okay. And you convened this disciplinary board to discuss what are the parameters or any discipline that ought to be imposed, is that correct?
Well, we impaneled this committee made up of the deputy superintendents and the superintendent, and where internal affairs comes in and briefs us on the report. We have a copy of it. They give us a summary gist of what happened. The purpose of the committee was several things. Number one is we truly want to get it right. In the past, under past administrations, you know, it went up through the chain of command. It would go all the way through the major, section commander, major deputy superintendent. But from that point, it would go on to the chief of staff. And the final step was the superintendent got it and made a decision by themselves as to what the appropriate discipline would be. I felt that a more equitable and fair process for our employees would be if a group of us from different backgrounds, different life experiences, sat down and talked about what the employee did and try to come up with the right answer, because admittedly, I don't have all the right answers. And it also, a second part of that with the disciplinary review committee was to allow input that keeps us honest. It keeps me as a superintendent from having a relationship with one employee that's good and maybe having a relationship with another employee that's not so good. So under similar circumstances, I favor the employee that I have a good relationship with and maybe give them less harsh discipline than I would someone who I may not get along very well with. We hold each other accountable for that and make sure that that does not occur, that everyone gets the same discipline for the same similar facts of cases that we work. So, you know, all in all, the purpose of the committee is for me to seek advice and recommendations, and to, in the hopes that we get it right most of the time.
Colonel, just briefly, Trooper Jones it is alleged that he violated one of the procedural orders involving interference and another procedural order involving conduct unbecoming.
Yes.
Just, you've heard Jones' testimony, your Cromwell testimony. Tell the commission whether you believe that Jones interfered in that crime scene.
You want me to cover them both at the same time?
Yes, sir.
I'm not gonna, well, this was a very difficult case for us to decide on. We're all parents. And as a parent, I certainly, as a father, I certainly understand Trooper Jones's actions and his interest in what happened to his son that night. No doubt about it. Don't honestly know how I would have reacted that night under similar circumstances. But, and let me say this before I go any further, I want to acknowledge the fact that I believe that Trooper Jones exerted incredible restraint in not being physical with someone who had harmed his son. I do believe that. Having said that, trying to differentiate between being a father and being a senior administrator of a law enforcement agency, there was a huge conflict there. When Trooper Jones found out about his son, and then from that time that he contacted his son and the time that he showed up at Good's house, home, time had elapsed. There was not a threat there anymore. The situation had ceased for the moment. We as law enforcement officers sometimes forget that when our family members or us are involved in a situation, that we have to step back and we have to let somebody else handle it. That's not in our nature. And our nature is for us to handle it. But in this particular situation, and in others, but particularly we're talking about this one today, Trooper Jones became, and his family became, the complainant/victims. And believe me, they were victims, and I believe that in my heart. But there's responsibility that you have as a victim complainant, and that is to present present your side of the story to the law enforcement officials that are investigating it and let them do their job. And we have responsibilities as Louisiana State Troopers that we have to adhere to the laws of our state, and we have to adhere to the policy and procedures of our agency. And unfortunately, I think that we crossed the line here. And by hearing the deputy's testimony, he said himself that he felt like he was interfered with on the first half of his investigation by Trooper Jones being at Good's residence. He changed the way he handles most investigations. Most investigations, and this is true for most law enforcement agencies, you hear from the victim of what happened and then you contact the suspect. He had to change that because he wanted to make sure, he was trying to protect Trooper Jones from getting in a fight. But when he gets there and he starts to question Good, you know, he gets interrupted. The rights have been read to Mr. Good. He doesn't have to answer one question at all. But we can't take off the persona that we are law enforcement officers, even though we are, you know, the victims in this case when we're there. And so it kind of overwhelms that you're still a police officer and I'm telling you to give me an answer that you're not really required to give. Also, having consumed alcoholic beverages in the near proximity to being over there causes us to maybe not think as clearly as we should. Now, that compounded a bad situation where he wasn't thinking as clearly as a normal person would, because he's taking into effect, he's in trauma mode right now. His son has been assaulted by a trusted individual, being a teacher and a coach. But we compound that a little bit when we add alcohol to it, and then we add a little more to it when we actually go to the coach's home where the police should be handling the action. And the officer said himself he had to ask him to step back several times. Asking Good to step out in the yard and handle it like men, or something to that effect, you know, no good's going to come out of that. If that would have happened, then, you know, we very well could have been sitting here talking about a trooper being charged with a battery. And that would have been a worse situation that wouldn't have been helpful. And as I said in the beginning, I do believe that he, his son, and his whole family are victims in this. But the fact of the matter is, we are held to a standard that we have to adhere to our policies and procedures on or off duty that hold us to that standard that the public expects from state troopers. Having said that, we as a disciplinary review committee, we initially thought that 40 hours was an appropriate disciplinary measure. 40 hours of suspension was an appropriate disciplinary measure for what happened out there. I don't think any of us really felt good about it. Some time passed. We issued it. Some time passed, and we met again. I think we all had time to think about it and consider it, and I think we all thought we went a little heavy-handed on it. For what the family had been through, for what the trooper had been through, he did show some incredible restraint. So we met again, and one of the members of the committee, one of the deputy superintendents, he kind of classified it as I'm having buyer's remorse here on this one. And I think in retrospect, looking back at it, we talked about it, we reviewed the case, we reread the case. Now, all we have available to us is our internal affairs case file. Is what we make our decision. We don't have the sheriff's office report and all that. So we thought that 12 hours, in retrospect, 12 hours was probably a more appropriate disciplinary measure for having gone to the house of the coach, having interfered, if you will, with the investigation, changing the investigation, having to be asked to step back, having consumed alcohol and being there, and having asked the coach to step out into the yard. We thought that 12 hours was a more appropriate disciplinary measure than 40. That wasn't agreed with, I don't think. So, sitting here today, what I would like to ask you as a body, as a commission deciding on this to do, if I may, is I would like to ask that you negate the 40-hour suspension that was given to this trooper. But I would ask that you support a 12-hour suspension for the actions and for the reasons, the aforementioned reasons that I spoke of.
I have no further questions.
Colonel, I gotta tell you, I think I started doing these civil service things in 1973. It's the first time I ever heard a appointing authority say what you just said. Brings tears to my eyes. I appreciate that. You didn't have to say it. I still disagree with you. But I gotta tell you, I mean, I haven't done 1,000 of these maybe. First time I've heard it. I appreciate that. Wow. Isn't it true, you heard Cromwell testify, he never did ask Trooper Good. I'm sure, I'm sorry, I mean, you shouldn't be my core here.
That's the first time I've ever seen that.
Cromwell didn't, you heard Cromwell say he didn't ever ask him to leave the scene.
Yes, sir.
He could have instructed him or ordered him away from the scene and didn't do it. You said y'all as a disciplinary committee, y'all try and look at what happened in similar cases. I never had one like this before. Have you?
No, sir. I would say that is why we went back with some further personal inspection and thought that maybe we got it wrong the first time.
I'm interested in the conduct unbecoming or how that adversely affects how it impacted the department. Was that because the sheriff's office, it impacted the sheriff's office in some way, or, I mean, has this gotten criticism of Trooper Jones acting in the way he did? How did that adversely affect the department?
Well, I have not had zero conversation with any sheriff's office officials, any deputies, anybody. The only people I've had conversations with concerning this case has been our command staff and our internal affairs investigative bureau. But, you know, I think that the conduct that is unbecoming is the part where it doesn't reflect most favorably on himself or the department to invite someone into a yard to settle a matter in lieu of going to jail. I don't believe that stepping in front of, in between, beside an investigating deputy while he's trying to question a suspect, I don't think that reflects favorably on the Louisiana State Police and the way we do our business. Understand this. I think that Trooper Jones is an excellent trooper. I think he got put into a bad situation that night as a parent. And I think there's some other decisions that could have been made if we'd have taken a few deep breaths, and I know it was hard to do. I acknowledge that. Don't know that I could do it, but you understand that when you make those decisions, you open yourself up to circumstances.
I truly am just gonna get one more question.
Heard that before.
I got one finger up, Mr. Bell.
One automatic thing.
It is automatic.
Does IA as a practical matter, in trying to attempt to try and interview all witnesses to a particular circumstance before making a recommendation?
I would assume that they made an attempt to interview all witnesses that they thought were pertinent to the investigation.
Same question, but a follow-up. So do you know whether or not they interviewed O'Brien Dupree, who was there on the scene when this all happened?
No, sir.
Thank you, sir.
No, you're right.
Any commissioners?
Thank you.
Dawson Snell, Haley Jones, Mark Marshaw, and Matt Jones. And I think Haley Jones and Matt Jones probably want to come in and listen. And I'd like to call Chandler now.
I'll release those individuals and
get Good here, we'd have to interfere with football practice at Sterling County. Unbelievable.
Is that private or public school?
Public.
Well, what classification?
What football classification?
Sir?
What football classification do they play?
3A.
3A, okay.
That should be the cell number.
Oh, yeah.
I do have, I'm gonna briefly call just two more witnesses and then we're gonna wrap this up.
Ms. Falcon, you're free to call whoever you think you need to
I
call.
promise I'm gonna wrap it up. I mean, I get it. But I also just need to make a record, so. Over here, Chandler. Chandler, you've been sworn already. Would you just tell everybody your name?
Chandler Jones,
How old were you when this incident happened at Good's house?
16.
Had you ever been to Good's house before?
Yes, sir.
Had you been over there drinking before?
No, sir.
What had you been in his house doing?
Running errands for him during class.
And he would give you these instructions to go do things for him at his house during class?
Yes, sir.
In addition to providing you with beer, he provided other minors with beer there at his house?
Yes, sir.
Did he provide you with vodka?
Yes, sir.
Did he instruct you to drink the vodka?
Yes, sir.
And when you did not want to drink the vodka, what did he do?
Called me a pussy.
Did he do that more than one time?
Yes, sir.
Did he strike you?
Yes, sir.
How many times?
Good amount of times.
Repeatedly?
Yes, sir.
Where?
In the face and in the chest.
Let's leave the house. Did drinking the vodka cause you to throw up?
Yes, sir.
to tell him in your own words, what happened is y'all left to go from his house back to the party. What happened?
He told me to get on the golf cart, and I said no, and he told me to get on, that nothing's gonna happen. And we went, and then he started yelling at me about how I'd never been beaten before. And so I stopped, he stopped the golf cart, he said he's about to give me a beating. And he kinda jumped to my back and threw me to the ground, got on top of me, started swinging, saying how he's gonna beat me like his father beat him. And about how I'm a pussy and how I've never been beaten like he has before. And then I just repeated on, and then that's whenever Chase came and got him off of me.
Did he threaten you in any fashion?
Yes, sir. He said he's gonna kill me numerous times.
Were you afraid, Shannon?
Yes, sir.
Tell us what happened after that.
I rode with Chase. We went back to the bonfire, and I told everybody what happened. And then Kylie Bunton called her dad, who knows my dad, so they came. And then before that, Goog came. His wife came looking for him because he took off on his dirt bike, and she was looking for him and everything. He came out of the field on his dirt bike and came up and started yelling at everybody, saying how he's about to beat the crap out of everybody there, and how he don't care how old we are. And then two of my buddies got him back and it was holding him down in the truck. And then my other buddy, Trevor, they were holding him back and they were about to just yelling at each other. And then they got him in, shut the door, and his wife drove off.
So he didn't just threaten you that day, he threatened all the kids at the party?
Yes, sir.
Did you explain that to your dad, when your dad came to look for you?
Yes, sir.
That's all the questions I have.
No questions?
I'd like to call Jake.
Just one second. Any commissioners have any questions?
I'm sorry.
No, we don't have any.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank
You previously sworn,
Yes, sir.
I think Mr. Croucher kind of took you through physically where you went and what you did and so forth. What I'm interested in is telling these board members what you were thinking and what you were trying to find out about this guy, Coach Gould.
I wanted both sides of the story, pretty much is what I wanted. I wanted to make sure that what Shannon was saying was true. And I wanted to look Coach Gould in the eyes and you know, see what I don't know, get his side of the story, pretty much is all I wanted to hear, both sides of the story.
Well, did you, before you went over and talked to Gould at his house, did you believe that the investigating officers were finished with him?
Yes.
And did either Cromwell or somebody, did they wave you over to the area where you could talk to Gould?
Cromwell turned and looked at me, put his hands up like this. And
So
then
he told us what he might have meant or what he thought. How did you take the signals that he gave you? How did you interpret them?
if you want to talk to him, this is night time.
And you restrain yourself from talking to him before then?
Yes.
I want to go a little bit further back in time because I know your captain got told that you were beating on the windows and beating on the doors. Did you do any of that?
No, sir.
Other than raising your voice and saying the one curse word you said, did you believe you did anything wrong here?
No, sir.
Did you intend to impede with this investigation at all?
No, sir.
Did you intend to cause any disrepute on the Louisiana State Police?
No, sir.
You proud of your position?
Yes, sir.
I'll go back to my original question. I want you to tell these men what was going through your mind as you waited under that carport, and then you waited for the interrogation of Coach Good to be over.
I wanted to know the truth. I wanted both sides of the story, and wanted to make sure my son was telling the truth at both sides of every story. And I've already heard my son's side of the story, and like I said, I want to hear his side of the story, and make sure everything, what matched, and pretty much it. Just there for the safety of my son, and for my kid. As a father, that's what I wanted to do. That was it.
I think you already testified to this, but did you, if Good would have wanted to fight, would you have fought with him?
No. I think I was run off at the head at that time. I was.
As a matter of fact, wasn't he just kind of like a bumbling idiot on the ground, couldn't stand up?
Pretty much, yeah. It was.
You wouldn't have had too much trouble taking care of him, would you?
No.
Did you do anything physical, sir?
No, sir.
Did you talk to your captain? Did you tell your captain what happened?
Yes.
What did he tell you?
He said, "Did you put your hands on him?" "No, sir." "Was you wearing police clothing?" "No, sir." "Did you identify yourself as a police officer?" "No, sir." "Then I don't give a fuck what you said to him." That was his exact words. I wasn't trying to cuss him, but that was his exact words that he said.
Thank you, sir. That's all I have. Answer any questions.
I have no question.
Chairman, I have one.
Go ahead, Commissioner Cronwell.
Just real quick, in light of everything that's happened, in light of what you told us, and I think we have a very clear picture, all 100% of us, not 90%, as to what happened here. You being a law enforcement officer with the experience and the expertise that you have, just, would you have done anything different? Looking back, or would you have done everything the same way?
Now, looking back now, especially after everything that's happened,
Yeah.
no, he got nothing.
Yeah.
So.
Is that it?
Yeah, that's all.
You heard Deputy Cromwell say that when you stepped in front of him, between them, however you want to describe that, that he asked you to step back and you did not immediately step back. Is that?
No, that's not. He never told me to step back.
So you disagree with that?
Yes, he sat there and listened to me have this conversation that lasted a couple seconds between me and Good, probably not even 30 seconds or so. And I was talking to him just as calm manner as to be, to almost a whisper, talking to him. And he was right behind me, sat there and listened to me talk to him. And he said he would put him in cuffs. He didn't put him in cuffs. And when I started getting loud, asking him, did he put his hands on my kid, and the final time, I don't know where Corporal Benson come from. He walked from behind him and just went ahead and put him in handcuffs the last time. And when he put him in handcuffs, I walked to the truck, and that was it.
We rest.
We're done. Closing arguments.
Sure. Although we all know what happened.
No, sir, I'm kidding.
Oh.
I cannot top my colonel.
My answer to that is, I've been arguing since I got here.
Yeah.
I would suggest that the commission take a 30-minute recess before we begin our deliberations on this matter, and I suggest the parties sit down and talk this matter over some more.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. We'll entertain a motion to end the executive session and come back into public.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Jared Ricky.
Yes.
Brian Crawford.
Yes.
Harold Perry.
Yes.
Jeffrey Paul.
Yes.
Leonard Knapp,
Yes.
Ulysses.
Yes. We're back in session in the matter of Trooper Joseph Jones, docket number 17237S. Oh, you're just sitting in a different place.
Yes. Well, I was up there and everybody's back here, so I felt it.
Trooper Joseph Jones has been charged with violating Louisiana State Police Policy and Procedure number 901, Code of Conduct and Ethics, Section 22, interference, which states in pertinent part, 3 I's. A commissioned officer shall not interfere or intervene in any lawful arrest or prosecution brought by another officer of the office or by any other agency or person unless requested to do so by said agency or person. He was also charged with violating Louisiana State Police Policy and Procedure number 901, Code of Conduct and Ethics, Section 4, conduct unbecoming an officer, which states in pertinent part, I, a commissioned officer shall conduct himself at all times, both on and off duty, in such a manner as to reflect most favorably on himself and the department. II, unbecoming conduct is defined as conduct which, A, brings the department or any of its subdivisions into disrepute, B, reflects discredit upon the officer as a member of the department, E, may reasonably be expected to destroy public respect for state police officers and or confidence in the office of state police. Do we have a motion to engage in public discussion of whether or not there was a violation of these provisions?
I'll move.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Floor is open to any commissioners who wish to discuss the matter.
I'd like to start off in saying this is a very difficult case, nonetheless. I'm a father of 2 boys, and I couldn't imagine having to deal with something like this, and somebody called me in the middle of the night to say my son was beat up, assaulted, and battery committed on my son by a coach, a trusted person within the community who's supposed to be looked at a high regard and well respected, and find out that I go find my son and see visible injuries on my son, and now my anger and my I guess my assurance that this did take place based on all the witnesses that saw this incident occur. And I heard the testimony today about there was some time for some cool reflection where Trooper Jones found out his son was all right. That's the most important thing to me as a father. I'm not saying I wouldn't have done the same thing. I might have done the same exact thing you did that night, and I'm sure it would, and I might have done worse. I really don't know in that situation. But after, I would hope, knowing after I found out my son was fine and he was safe, that made it wouldn't have made it easy, but at least would have known that the sheriff's office is en route. They're going to handle this. This person's going to be arrested. Charges are going to be brought before this person, and I would hopefully I would have let the sheriff's office deal with the matter and remove myself from the situation. Do I think I could have done that? I would hope I could have, but I'm not certain. And I know as a law enforcement officer, unfortunately, we're held to a higher regard in order to make those hard decisions to let that law enforcement entity take care of investigating the crime. If you knew and had information which you provided, which Trooper Jones provided, he knew where the coaches lived, he knew where the witnesses were, he knew where everybody was. After some reflection, in hindsight, maybe he should have just had the sheriff's office do their job and maybe not have went to Coach Good's house, who earlier had showed the kids a rifle. In this time, day, and age, you have the kids being shown a rifle, and now at 2 o'clock in the morning, or whatever time it was in the morning, somebody's outside his house. And it could have been a situation that could have escalated and been worse than it really was at the time. So I just feel it was unsafe in hindsight, and I'm not saying I wouldn't have done the same thing, to go there and try to find the coach. So I feel maybe at that point there should have been some step back and reflection on letting the sheriff's office do their job and not interfere with their investigation. That's my take on it.
Sure. Commissioner Reed.
I think you will find everyone up here is gonna echo the same sentiments about, had we been in the same position, we probably would have done the same thing we did, if not worse. To echo the Colonel's words, you showed great restraint, in my opinion, unbelievable restraint. As far as intervening, you know, I found Trooper Jones very, very credible, I understand, was very plain spoken, which I appreciate. And the deputy that was on the witness stand testified that he continued to help him with his investigation, which probably went a lot faster and a lot smoother because of Trooper Jones being there and being involved. You know, there was obviously some back and forth about who said what or what Trooper Jones did or didn't do. I found Trooper Jones very credible. You know, I guess everybody's got their own vote on the definition of intervening. Is intervening positive or intervening negative? You know, he certainly was there. He stayed. As soon as the sheriff's office asked for his help, he was there to help. So I hear what you're saying, and I understand the fact that perhaps had he just stayed out by the road and left when the sheriff's office got there, maybe something that potentially could have gone bad wouldn't have gone bad. But in reality, had he left, this investigation would have drug out a lot longer, maybe not come to the conclusion they came to, maybe not have the ability to get witness testimony, witness statements in the heat of, you know, directly after the heat of the action. It might have been a day or two later before they had gotten those statements and really gotten to it. So that's my feelings on it.
Anyone else?
Since this is my first meeting, so I'm getting thrown into a very difficult and emotional situation because I can easily place myself, as was said, into that exact situation. However, I do think that we've got to be able to divorce ourselves in some way from taking those kind of action where you're going to put yourself and perhaps other law enforcement officers in a difficult situation. I think going to the scene where the perpetrator was an intervention in what was an investigation that was ongoing at that time, and for that reason, that's the reason for my vote regarding this suspension.
Yeah.
Commissioner Crawford.
I'm not gonna rehash what everybody said. You guys are law enforcement officers, so you see it more than I do, but I see it a lot in Shreveport in the metropolitan area. And I'm a father of 4 too. I probably would have done the same thing, and like Commissioner Foss said, maybe worse. The challenge that I have and the struggle that I have in looking at the charges that were brought in this particular case are, in Shreveport, we have a high rate of domestic violence. And so you had the recipe for that night. You had alcohol, you had family, you had emotions, you had firearms. You had, when all of these things play into a scenario, what could have potentially happened didn't, thank God, but what could have potentially happened at 3 o'clock in the morning with somebody banging on some windows in civilian clothes, and you have somebody who's inside who's intoxicated, by all accounts, could have been a lot worse. And so we preach from a civilian perspective to our citizenry. Let the professionals in law enforcement handle these types of issues. And so, you know, phone calls could have been made and that could happen. I think once knowing that the child was safe, although taking nothing away from the fact that he was beat up by an adult, which is disgusting, especially someone who's trusted with the safeguard of our children in a community. And I'm still not sure how I can weigh that in proportion to this case and what happened to him or what didn't happen to him. But one of the things that I'll be looking to do from this body is to issue a letter to the school board and saying how incensed we are about their particular actions. But I
Or
think
lack thereof.
Or lack thereof. And I agree. I think it could have been handled in a different way, and certainly being a law enforcement officer, knowing those situations and how they can quickly escalate, not meaning that you wanted something to happen. In almost all of these cases, nobody wants something fatal to happen, but they do. And so you try not to put yourself in that scenario or to create a scenario that causes that to happen. And so I don't think that had to happen that night, and it could have.
And I'll just briefly comment, I don't want to repeat what others have said either, but I do want to echo some comments. I have some regrets in this case. I regret we don't have authority over others other than the trooper in this case. I wish we had authority over what could happen or should happen or would happen to the coach in this case. It's reprehensible to me what has happened, that he is still coaching our young people, and it's a shame in my view. And I will join wholeheartedly in a resolution to write to the school board and question how that could be. It's just, I was shocked when that information came out. I just completely found it unbelievable. Relative to what we do have authority to deal with, this is a tough case. I'll take it one step further. Not only might I have done worse, I would have done worse. If I was out there, I would have done worse. I'll just admit it. I would have. If I'd have walked up to him, I'd have done more than hollered at him. But then that's a human response. I have a 16-year-old grandson right now. If that happened, if I was out there, I can't tell you what I'd have done. I have 3 daughters. If that would have happened to one of my daughters, I know I would not have had the restraint that Trooper Jones had. But unfortunately, in our particular positions in life, just we may be called upon to do more than what humanly we might want to do. And I listened very carefully as to the charge relative to interfering and the definition of that. Even if I accept as true, which I do, Trooper Jones's statement that he felt that they were finished with their investigation, he felt they were finished with their questioning, and therefore there was no true interference in the sense that it stopped them from doing what they wanted to do. In my mind, there was an intervention, and the policy says to interfere or intervene in the arrest. And by my reckoning with those terms, I cannot help but believe not only the law, but the spirit of that particular provision was implicated and violated when he appeared at the scene, stepped in, continued to question the suspect, not in uniform, but still continued to do so. In the regulation and the rule, policy says both on or off duty, those obligations are imposed. So with much regret, I think it's pretty obvious the way I'm going to I feel I'm compelled to have to vote on that issue. But with all due respect to Trooper Jones.
Do we,
I would like to make a motion to rescind the imposed discipline.
We have to
okay, first find whether there's a violation, a motion on whether there was a
Um,
violation of
okay.
any of the provisions that he was charged with. Is there a motion?
I'll move.
I would move to find a violation of what he's charged with. Procedure 901, Code of Conduct Ethics, Section 22.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor, what do you want?
We'll take a roll call.
Roll
Jared Ricky,
No.
Ryan Crawford,
Yes.
Harold Perry, Jeffrey Foss,
Yes.
Leonard Knapp,
Yes.
and Eula Simeon.
Yes. With regrets.
Okay. Now I'll make the motion to rescind the imposed discipline, and I would like to replace it with a letter of reprimand.
Is there a second?
Second.
You want a roll call?
Can we split the vote on that?
I'm sorry?
Would you entertain a substitute motion where we would split the vote on first rescinding it and then
Oh, okay, so,
making a vote on?
okay, so
the-
first,
Sure.
the motion to rescind that you second? And then you want a roll call on whether to rescind the discipline that was imposed, which was a 40-hour suspension.
Correct, right, which is also inconsistent with what the colonel's current position is on what the appropriate discipline should be.
Okay. Roll call.
Okay, Jared Ricky,
Yes.
Can I get an understanding of what we're voting for?
Just to
Divided?
rescind.
We're divided, right now, just to
rescind it.
rescind. yes.
Okay.
Ryan Crawford,
Yes.
Harold Perry,
Yes.
Jeffrey Foss, Leonard Knapp,
Yes.
Eula Simeon.
Yes.
Yeah.
You wanna
Now
make
I'd
a
like to make a motion to issue the letter of reprimand. Second that motion.
Jared Ricky.
Well, we need to open up if there's any
Okay.
discussion
Okay.
on the
Any
pending motion. Would you like
Well,
the previous comments?
I think my previous comments kind of,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, did y'all dispose of both violations?
We
we did.
Only-
We're only focused on one.
the 40-hour additional suspension.
Well,
I just didn't hear the vote on the
He's
the
asking
second
about the
charge.
second
The
charge.
second charge, my
we-
motion was on the first one.
well, I thought our motion, there's only a single charge. There was two bases that was set forth. And we found that there was a violation of,
That's fine.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, well, we're
well,
ready to.
I would like to address the motion.
Okay, yeah, he wants to discuss.
But I wanted to give the mover the opportunity first, but he said he's.
I appreciate that.
Because of the nature of the situation that fortunately did not materialize, but because of the duty that's imposed upon us as citizens, but more importantly upon law enforcement, to not add to what was a horrendous situation out there that night. I think my personal view is that more than a letter of reprimand would be inappropriate discipline. I agree with the colonel that less than 40 hours would be appropriate, but we have to look at the whole factor. And I say that in light of what I've already said. I know I would have done out there, but in light of that, the fact that there was such a potential that this could have gone way worse than it did. And in light of the fact that as a trooper, the troopers are called upon to take that opportunity for cool reflection and to make a different decision that I probably wouldn't have made. I cannot support the motion that was presented.
Any further discussion?
I say the same, with a heavy heart.
Oh.
I wanted to say I agree with.
Yeah, I know.
I agree with you, and with a heavy heart, like I said, I might have made the same decision or even worse. And I think there's still an obligation to let, hopefully, the sheriff's office do their job and make the appropriate arrest at the time.
I think the heavy heart of everybody that's sitting on this commission, and I appreciate you bringing it back up, but can go without being said, that this, it is ridiculous what has happened in this case.
Ready for the roll call vote?
The motion again, please.
The motion is for a letter of reprimand.
Jared Ricky,
Yes.
Ryan Crawford,
No.
Harold Perry,
Yes. No.
Leonard Knapp,
No.
Eula Simeon.
No. The previously imposed discipline has been rescinded. Is there a motion from anyone?
I would make a,
Discipline.
I would make a motion that we recommend that we adopt a 12-hour suspension.
I second the motion.
Any discussion?
Hearing none, we'll call for a roll call.
Jared Ruffin,
No.
Brian Crawford,
Yes.
Harold Perry,
No.
Jeffrey Foss,
Yes.
Leonard Knapp,
Yes.
and Eula Simeon.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, if I could.
Sure.
As Mr. Crawford and I spoke about, and he spoke about just now, I would very much like this commission to draft some type of document to go to the school board and with Mr. Burns' constant attendance, make sure that the press gets it, so that we can get some light on the fact that this coach behaved in this manner, did these things. We sat here today listening to this testimony that as a father and as a citizen of this state, I'm appalled by, as we all are. And this man gets $300 fine and he's back to coaching after the impact of that man's family. This is beyond ridiculous. So whatever this commission can do to draft and put it forward, I would beg of my fellow commissioners.
Second.
Thank you.
I think we can do that by, we don't need a roll call vote on that. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimously, aye.
Thank you. Lenore, would you mind drafting something for us?
Okay.
And then just send it around for our review and signature? Thank you.
Any other matters related to this proceeding, docket number 17237S?